Welcome to Mango's Compliance Conversations. In this series, we're talking to experts on different sort of compliance topics. And today I'm joined with Andrew Thornhill from IRM Systems in Melbourne and Craig Thornton from Mango. So Andrew has the rare ability to teach auditors how to audit. He writes systems for people and he helps people go through certification. Craig, as we all know, is one of the owners of Mango. Today we're going to talk about something that we hear all the time is, I'm in the compliance department, but they treat me like an overhead. And is how do we break that? Because, I remember when I was a quality manager and I wanted to buy a computer, so that I could put in data and analyse that data. And I kept on going, but you're an overhead, so you can't get it. We'll put a computer out into production or something like that. So how do we change senior management's approach to the compliance department? So Andrew, what are your thoughts?
Look, I think the language we use and the way we frame what we're doing as the compliance manager or the quality manager are really, really important. And we almost need to put in steps to transition the original, often the focus early on when we're trying to implement a system is on conforming and compliant. So we can get a certificate on the wall, and that's perhaps the perception management and operational staff keep sort of maintaining their head about what we're doing. And at some point I think compliance managers can actually be quite active in trying to transition that perspective as we're not, okay, yes, our initial focus was on just conforming to the standard, but now what do we really have these systems in place for? If we've got a safety system, we're aiming to provide a safe workplace. If we've got a quality system, we want to be really good at meeting our customer needs and limit rework and things like that. And I think that's not going to change without perhaps the compliance team taking some steps to educate this top management and the workforce as well. Sometimes I have seen compliance managers be their own worst enemy. I was working with one recently who was explaining to a group of operators, they were saying, why have we got to do this? And the answer was, well, because our auditors expect it, which is, number one, it's not motivating. I mentioned the word framing before. If everyone's perceiving it as we're doing this for the sake of compliance to a standard, no, how do we transition that more broadly? And this helps us manage our risks as an organisation and be a better performer and work efficiently and not incur unnecessary incidents, rework, and all the costs that come out of, food safety, out of a recall, the reputational damage, or safety, the cost of an accident. And I'll hand over to Craig in a moment, but I guess the other part of it too is to start to measure some of those costs so we can go back to the management and say, well, this is actually costing us X amount per year.
Yeah, it's framing your language, it's getting in the ear of the leaders in the organisation, it's presenting yourself as a compliance department as adding value to the business. So as you say, when you do start out and implement these systems, it's getting that certificate on the wall, but you need to transition and mature and become less of the, hey, we're a cost to the organisation, more to let's turn ourselves into like a profit centre.
Yep.
I know you've done that before in your organisations, Peter, as well. You've got to frame the language to being, hey, look, we're now making improvements, we're going to save you money, let's look at some lean things, let's look at some improvement, let's improve our incident rates, let's improve our quality statistics so that we can, show and prove to the leadership team that we are of value to the business.
Yeah.
So you've got to completely change your framing of your department so that you can be seen to be adding value.
One of the things I find annoying is that the compliance department quite often sits under another department. So your visibility is really lost down the bottom. I think they need to be brought up and be given their own budget.
Yep.
So a budget to train their own staff. And a lot of these people don't even know what lean is. They don't know what Six Sigma is. They don't know these other techniques because they never had a budget to go out and do some training. Because those are improvement techniques. And unless you are going out and learning them, you're just doing compliance and you're not going to get anything more than a piece of paper on the wall.
Yep.
And if you're going to be treated, if you want to be taken out, then you've got to be given a budget. But you also, with the budget comes responsibilities, I think. You've actually got to be able to measure and say, this is the current state, and if I was to make the current state less accidents and less product recalls, then that's actually going to affect the bottom line.
Yes.
So almost set like a budget saying, the compliance department this year will save us $500,000. And people go, but how do they do that? It's more about not repeating $500,000 worth of mistakes, because you're doing data, you're changing people's mindsets, you're educating and stuff like that, and that actually directly affects the bottom line. The place I used to work at, I was actually the most profitable department in the company because I reduced rework and these things, not me personally, but looking at process, looking at data, talking to people and saying, if we did it slightly different, what would be the result? And that meant that year we were the most profitable department in the company.
Look, I fundamentally agree. There's a real cost to incidents, whether they're safety or environmental food safety, rework, loss of reputation. There's a real cost to that, not often adequately measured or understood. There's a real cost to inefficient processes. If we better measure them, yes, that kind of language you're using does talk to top management. Yes, hang on now, if we are having incidents and here's the real cost, if we are having inefficient processes and here's the real cost, well, that's important.
And the other one is like, where do they sit on the senior management team? If you're in a department that works under another department, your voice is way down at the bottom. So when you're trying to influence the senior managers, they never hear your voice.
Yes.
Your person that you report to may present a set of figures, but they don't own those figures, they don't really know their background. They just say, here are the quality, or here's the environment, here's the health and safety stats for the month, and it gets tabled, and that's great. Because he's not in a position, or that person's not in a position to give context. That's why that person needs to be brought up and be on that senior management. And the standards talked about it in the past is that you have to have direct access to senior management. So easiest way, I think, is you get on that senior management committee.
Look, I think that's very true. Often management teams sometimes struggle to understand what quality actually is. So we've got a quality manager. Well, from the executive management team don't really understand what that person does. And yes, fundamentally, I see all too often when we work with our customers, the quality or compliance officer, they get a seat at that table for about 2 minutes a year when they rush through a management review and say, what, any incidents, okay, move on, finances next, and they're not genuinely at that table. And you're right, ISO is pointed towards that and increase the top management accountabilities every time they revise the standard, because they should be at that table with.
Yeah, because Craig, you were a quality manager for a fairly big New Zealand company. Were you at that senior table?
I was at the senior table of one of the divisions, so I wasn't at the top table, which was a multinational. I was at one of the divisions based in New Zealand. But fortunately, I had a CEO that could see the responsibilities for quality, environmental, and health and safety, and the importance of those. But the thing that did wake the senior management up was those numbers that you did present to say, hey, look, these are the savings that we're making with these improvements, and this is this number here is actually helping the bottom line. So when you're talking to them with numbers, because they know numbers, that's what senior managers love. They can make decisions based on numbers. So when you present numbers to say, hey, look, we did this project, we made this profit from that particular project, and they'll come around pretty quickly.
I can't put my exact finger on it, but I think there's a little bit of a psychological thing there. When we're going to management to say, spend $1 to make $1, they're happy with that. If we're going to management to say, spend $1 to save $1, there's almost less commitment to avoiding a loss quite often. But as Peter's pointed out, that can add up to pretty decent sums of money. So
I think we sort of covered that, so I think we all agree. Have a seat on the table of the senior management, educate your CEO on the importance of, educate those guys at that table, get out of the department that you sit in and be very present. And the language that you talk to your staff in is very important. You want to take them along on that journey for you. So thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Craig.